150 സിനിമകൾ ഇറങ്ങിയിട്ട് 100 സിനിമ വിജയിച്ച ഒരു വർഷം ഒരു സിനിമ ഇൻഡസ്ട്രിയിലും ചരിത്രത്തിലുണ്ടായിട്ടില്ല. കാരണം ബേസിക്കലി ഹൈ ഫെയിലിയർ റേറ്റ് ഉള്ള ബിസിനസ്സാണ്. സോ ആസ് എ ബിസിനസ് ഇറ്റ് ഡസന്റ് മേക്ക് സെൻസ്.
The first Friday of 2025 is over. Guess how many Malayalam movies were released? 1? 2? No. 6 Malayalam movies were released on the first weekend itself. Identity, ID, Malabar Tales, Communist Pacha, Mr. Bengali, and Orimbattavan are those films. Welcome to Lensmen Reviews. We have something to discuss. As a cinephile who watches Malayalam movies predominantly, I believe 2024 was a great year. From a commercial blockbuster like Avesham to a wacky experimental film like Gaganachari, our movies were successful and they also got debated. Other industries were praising this acceptance all genres of films were receiving in our box office. The glory of 2024 suddenly diminished when the Producers Association published a press release on December 28, 2024, stating that 199 films were released in Malayalam last year and only 26 of them were profitable and achieved super hit and average hit status at the box office. That means approximately 1000 crores were invested through 199 films and only 300 to 350 crores were the returns through these 26 films. As someone who watches multiple films every weekend from theaters, the money wasn't the number that really bothered me. It was the number of films that were made. I'm someone from Kerala who watches Malayalam movies and shares my thoughts about them, and I have seen only 98 movies last year. That means I haven't even covered 50% of the movies in the list of Malayalam movies published by the Producers Association. Naturally, I checked the list of movies the association published along with the press release. There were so many films in that list that even the people within the industry might not have heard about most of them. I just want to reiterate one thing I wrote in an article on the Lensmen Reviews website last year when the industry people were complaining about review bombing. If there is any kind of bombing happening in Malayalam cinema, it is release bombing. There are 52 weeks in a year, and if you are releasing roughly 200 movies a year, that means almost 4 Malayalam movies per week. In a market like Kerala, where other language movies have a great influence, how many people would choose to watch all these Malayalam films? Before Corona, there was a scenario where even the average kind of films managed to gain some profit. Even lackluster movies that had superstar were not causing huge damage to the producers of such films. But now things have changed. You are either getting a big hit or else it is going to be a washout flop. In the current scenario of Malayalam cinema, making an okay film is a huge risk. I'm not saying such films have not tasted success at the box office last year, but it's a risk that you can't justify if the movie tanks. The humor, sentiments, romance and songs packaging era is almost over. If you look at most of the movies that worked in 2024, they were genre films. I conducted a poll on the community page of the YouTube channel and the Instagram handle of the channel at the end of 2024, asking people how many movies they watched in theaters in 2024. The Instagram poll, in which 583 people voted, 39% said they had watched more than 25 films from theaters, while 61% said they watched less than 25 films from theaters. There was a significant number of people who watched less than 10 films last year in theaters. In the YouTube poll, in which 131 people voted, 57% of the audience saw less than 10 films from theaters, and the number of people who saw more than 20 films from theaters was only 18%. Please note the fact that they have only said the number of movies they saw in theaters last year. It is not necessary that they are all in Malayalam. You can argue that limited audience of Lensmen Reviews cannot be taken as a legitimate source to identify audience behavior. But let's face it, we all know the frequency of film viewing by people of late. How many movies you all saw in theaters in 2024? Please comment. The clipping that I showed at the beginning has Prithviraj say that the movie industry is fundamentally an industry with an extremely low success rate. It is indeed a valid point, and we can actually ignore the 1000 crores number game. But the fact that there were nearly more than 100 films last year that nobody even knew were made or released is an alarming factor that needs to be discussed. It is foolish to believe that every movie that gets a release will be watched by everyone if all of them are good. The movie watching experience is an extremely expensive one these days. If you release 4 movies every weekend, people are definitely going to check the reviews and opinions to pick one from the lot. A 4-member family will have to spend a minimum of 1000 rupees in total to watch a movie. So in case if they end up watching a horrible film, the chances of them thinking twice before watching another film are extremely high. And one has to keep in mind the fact that the people nowadays have subscriptions to platforms like Netflix and Amazon Prime, and since it is also an investment, people will definitely wait for the OTT release of certain movies to make the most of the subscription. The release window and the lack of breathing space for a film are the major issues here. Let's have a look at the number of films in Malayalam that are getting released before Ramzan month starts. January 9th, we have Asif Ali and Anashwara Rajan starrer Rekha Chitra. January 10th, Arjun Ashokan, Balu Varghese and Anashwara Rajan starrer Ennu Swandam Punyalan. January 16th, Basil Joseph and Saubin Shahir's Pravin Kudushapu. January 16th, Suraj Venyaramud and Joju George starrer Narayana Moonu Aanmakkal. Apparently, social media posts of this movie has stopped mentioning release date. January 23rd, we have Gautam Menon's first Malayalam directorial film starring Mammootty, Dominic and the Ladies First. January 24th, Dirish Pothan starrer A. January 24th, Arjun Ashokan and Anagha starrer Anbodu Kanmani. January 30th, the highly anticipated Mohanlal Tarun Murthy film Tudarum. February 6th, art director Jyotish Shankar's first directorial venture Ponman starring Basil Joseph. February 14th, after several production delays, Mammootty's Bazooka. February 14th, Sajin Gobu Anashwara Rajan film Paingili, which is written by Jittu Madhavan. February 14th, we have Arun D. Joseph's Bromance. February 14th also has David, starring Anthony Varghese Pepe. If reports are to be believed, February 20th will witness the release of Kunjaku Bobin starrer Officer on Duty, produced by Martin Prakat. Like how 4 small films that nobody knew were released along with Identity and ID, we can expect many such films along with all these above mentioned films. I have heard that OTT platforms are now offering only 5 crores to Malayalam movies that have earned 70 crores of gross collection. And a platform like Netflix wants only one Malayalam movie per month. In the last couple of years, we have seen even superstar films struggling to find OTT platforms. In a way, the reason why 2024 became the year of Malayalam cinema was the fact that the industry had to depend on theatrical performance to survive. OTT platforms have stopped offering crores of money just because of the presence of a star in that film. So when you are releasing at least 2 star-oriented films every week in an industry that depends heavily on theatrical run, how are the movies going to at least recover the invested money? How will they get prime time shows? I have only talked about Malayalam films till now. Kerala is a market where Hindi, English, Tamil and nowadays Kannada and Telugu films are getting good releases. If things move like this with no planning on releasing strategies, the number of movies that lasted for just a week in the theaters will increase dramatically. From the audience's point of view, the more the number of films that get released, the more the options they get. But remember how many of us just browse through numerous numbers of films on Netflix or Prime and then eventually turn them off and don't watch any? That psychological possibility is also there when you overproduce films. And there is no point in whining about losses if you're releasing more than a dozen films in a month. What all these responsible film organizations should do immediately is quality control and create a healthy releasing strategy. I know that it's not as simple as it sounds. India, as we speak, is still a democratic country and hence every citizen has the right to make movies. Feature films are being shot on iPhone and it should actually be looked at as a democratization of filmmaking. But what we are witnessing is the sad reality of a lot of people struggling to take their movies to the audience because they were oblivious to the reality of film distribution while conceiving these movies. We can categorize the dark reality of the movies that never get noticed into 3. First one is newcomer producers who get fooled. If you look at the 199 films the association has shown, we can see a lot of movies are by newcomer producers. There are a lot of people who are coming to produce movies without even knowing the basics of how much money is spent on a film set, what should be the remuneration of an actor, when they should release a film, how they should market a film, etc. They will blindly believe the words of people who may say stuff like, this much money we will get from OTT, this much money we will get from broadcast rights, this much from theaters, and if you cast so and so, the movie will become a hit. Finally, when the movie struggles to get a proper release window and eventually flops at the box office, These people will wash their hands on circumstances and also blame it on review bombing. Producers Association, who are good at banning people, should actually consider banning these kinds of scammers, and there should be an effort to set up an orientation session for new producers to show them the market reality. This can seriously reduce the number of flops and also save a lot of people's hard-earned money. The second category is the privilege seekers. I have seen established film producers like Santosh T. Kurubala and Liston Stephen talk about these kinds of tourist producers in interviews. They are not interested in the return of investment. They are using film production as a medium to enhance their publicity, showing their name as producers on the silver screen, having contacts with popular stars, and having them over for lunch or dinner are the priorities of these people. There are several filmmakers and directors who try to milk these publicity seekers. Third one is the black money people. A few years ago, when I watched a bad film, it made me wonder, would anyone with common sense would greenlight a script like this? I called someone who was close to the industry to ask, can people lose judgment like this? With a smile, that person told me, please don't ask any further questions. Let me just say that it is a black and white film. The first two categories I mentioned are kind of difficult to differentiate. But this last category of black money movies is relatively easy to find out. When you look at the booking app, the seats will be full, but when you reach the theater, all those seats will be empty. And most of them will be these hastily made ultra cliched films that would make you wonder, how can someone be this outdated? There is another minority that doesn't belong to all these categories. They may have great passion for cinema, but the technical knowledge and the lack of understanding on how much cinema has evolved would make them create outdated crafts by putting their entire life savings into one cinema. Because of the ignorance about aspects like marketing, releasing, combined with the shoddiness of the final product, those movies will also perish like all the other garbage. This stack of crap films that are either the result of ignorance or malicious intentions actually causes problems for relatively good small films. One of the reasons why Bharatanatyam, Pallotti 90s Kids and Sthanarthi Srikuttan couldn't find an audience despite getting favorable reviews was the fact that all these movies were surrounded by a pile of garbage films. Since 2025's first weekend itself witnessed 6 Malayalam releases, out of which only one seems to have earned access to week 2, it is very obvious that at the end of this year as well, we can expect a Producers Association statement stating our industry is in losses. I'm not saying that the huge remuneration of stars is not at all an issue from a production point of view. But there is no point in saying stuff like people didn't turn up despite good reviews after releasing small and big films back to back without any sort of planning.